Well, good morning. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. My name is Steve Lopez. Thank you for clicking on that link. Of course, it may not be morning where you are, but it's morning here. Having a sip of coffee and looking at a game from Mega Database. We're going to talk about references today. I'm looking at a game between Rudd and Morrison, and I come to a point here after Queen D2 where I'm kind of wondering what Black might want to do in this position. There are several options. The two I'm looking at are castling, which is what Morrison played, but I'm also wondering about Bishop D7. Not sure, kind of interested, so I figure I'll click on the openings book. Now it'll probably come up. It did. I'd actually had it closed for the purposes of this demonstration. Clicking on openings book, if you don't have an opening book loaded, you get a button that says load book. Likewise, if you click the reference tab, you get a pop-up that says, you don't have a reference database selected. I can't do this. You get nothing in these fields. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about setting up defaults, setting up references in ChessBase 11. To enable these features, there are a bunch of features in this software that don't work unless you select a reference database or a default opening book, what have you. So we're going to show you how to do that, and we're going to show you that right now. What you want to do is close what you're in and go back to your database desktop, and you need to select an opening book and a database as references. Now, how do you determine what to use as a reference? Typically, your reference database, if you keep one huge master database of every game you've ever accumulated, then you would use that database. In my case, I don't do that for reasons I've stated before. For example, I have Mega Database 2011, Opening Encyclopedia 2011, Correspondence Database 2011. I keep them separate. Reason being, two reasons really. One is I do technical support, and if somebody says they have a problem with game number, something, whatever in the Mega Database, I can't look for it unless I keep that separate and pristine the way it, I got it off the DVD. The other thing though is that when Mega Database 2012 comes out here at the end of the year, I can just ditch the Mega Database 2011, just delete it, put in Mega Database 2012 on my hard drive. This is also why I create separate databases. I do like to make notes in games. So if there's a game that I want to make notes in, I've got different databases for that. I've got databases on particular openings, like the Cochrane and the Caro-Kann Advance. I have something up here called Various Analysis, which is just different games that I've looked at over time. So I keep my large databases separate and pristine. You don't have to do that, but what I'm driving at here, though, is that your reference database, the one you select as your reference, typically ought to be the largest database that you have. Just because you've got more information for the software to work with. So in this case, Mega Database 2011 will become my reference database. To designate it as the reference database, you right-click on the icon, go to Properties down here at the end of the pop-up menu, and we get this. You've probably seen this before. You can pick different icons for your databases, for example. You can also change the name of it, the way it appears on the screen. I could change Mega Database to Big Honkin' Database or whatever, but there's no reason for that. Other things you can do here relating to training and the games you've imported into a database. What we're looking at mainly, though, what we want right here is this, reference DB. We want to set this up as our reference database, the one that ChessBase will use as a default when it carries out certain automatic functions. Now, I will tell you, by the way, when we go back, let's go back for just a minute before we do this. I want to show you something else that I neglected to mention, which is this. You may not have set up a reference database, yet when you click on the reference tab, you don't get this pop-up. You do get this populated. If you have an open internet connection, the software should go out into the online database that ChessBase maintains on their server in Germany and pull up this information and populate these three panes in this view. If it doesn't, you want to set up a reference database on your hard drive. Personally, I'm not connected to the internet with this computer. Again, for reasons I've previously stated, I can't do videos on a computer connected to the internet. The sound gets all choppy because there's too much going on. Unless you have a mega multi-processor computer, it's very hard to do videos. at least with an off-the-shelf model that I didn't pay an arm and 3 legs for. So I keep this off the internet on purpose. So I don't get these populated. I need to set up a local reference database. However, even on my other computer, my desktop that is connected to the internet at all times, I still set up a reference database. Because that way I'm not dependent on the internet, I'm not dependent on connection speed, whether 20 zillion other people are trying to hit that server at the same time. It just all happens locally on my hard drive. So I'm a big fan of local rather than doing things online if you can do something locally on your own computer. So we're going to right-click, Properties, and Reference Database. It'll change the icon. It'll jump down here to Reference. I'm just going to scroll back. It's easy enough to scroll back up and just pick whatever your icon was before if you prefer that icon. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put that back. Same thing with opening trees. I have one I made on the Caricon Advance that works in conjunction with this database. I also have the opening tree that comes with the opening encyclopedia. And I have PowerBook 2011. I want to use PowerBook. Definitely. It's the biggest tree that I've got, and it's based on actual practice rather than theory, based on games that actually got played rather than a theoretician saying, white is perhaps better here. So I'm going to right-click on that and go to Properties, and you will see a checkbox that says Default Book. Well, heck yeah. So we'll click on it. Now notice that our icon looks like a little bonsai tree, which I'm rather fond of. I think that's a cool little icon. If I click Default Book, we get this again. So I'm going back to Opening Book to change it back to my little bonsai tree, and then click OK. And there we are. And now we're ready to go. We can go back and double check. The book is still checked as Default Book. Mega Database, still checked as Reference Database. Now we go back to the game between Mr. Road and Mr. Morrison. Come here, and first thing I'll check is the openings book. And I notice the castling is played the most often. Then A6, Bishop D7 only gets played one time. It does really well for white too, so it's not a great move. But then again, you don't have enough. One game is not enough for a proper statistical sampling. But I'm sure if I sit here and look at it long enough, I'll figure out why Bishop D7 doesn't work. So castling is the most popular move, and then right behind it is pawn to A6, presumably to keep the bishop off of B5. And what I can figure from these two being the most popular responses, castling and A6, is that black is worried about bishop to B5. So there's two ways to take care of the pin proactively. Instead of waiting for the pin, you either castle now, or you play A6 to keep the bishop off of B5. And then white will castle, black will castle. And then we have the interesting opposite side castling, launch a pawn storm, let's have some fun kind of thing. So I imagine A6 in this position could actually also set up potential pawn on B7 to B5 at some point if there's going to be a pawn storm on the queen side to try to bust up this king's pawn structure. Interesting stuff. That's why you want a default, by the way. That's why if I didn't have this opening book loaded as a default, I wouldn't be going through all this cool stuff. I wouldn't be finding these things out, you see. So queen D2, we go back and look at the notation. And notice when I went in and put in an extra few moves after A6, it put them in as a variation, which is kind of cool. I could save that if I wanted to. Let's click the Reference tab and see what happens. We start getting fields populated. In fact, it happened pretty quick. What you have is 3 panes here. First pane, all the games in which this position after Queen D2 occurred. We click Reference, and we get all these games in which that position occurs with different responses from black. We have a central pane, which is not derived from an opening book, by the way. I went out and double-checked it. This is actually derived from the games in the database. This is all done from the stuff that's in Mega 2011. Shows you various variations, various ways this can play out. The number of games, success rate, that type of thing. All of this is looking pretty good for white, by the way, from this position onward. Up here, We have all kinds of information. And I believe we've looked at this before. You've got the moves that are played by black, the number of games, the score from white's viewpoint, when it was last played. You've got the best players based on ELO rating that played a particular move. You also have frequent players, players who frequently play a particular move in that position. And of course you have the hotness. I know for a fact we did a video on this way back when ChessBase 11 first came out. Basically hotness is based on the how recently the games were played, how recently that move that occurred in games, and the ELO ratings of the players who played that move. The exact formula is a secret. We don't know exactly how these are weighed in the balance, but it's a function of how recent the games were and how strong the players were, and that's why you get a hotness bar. The longer the bar and the redder the bar, the hotter the variation. So this is the hotness here, 8 castle kingside for black, which by the way we can click on, and now we get a whole bunch of other moves. So we can actually step through a tree here also with different information than we get from the opening book, standard opening book tree, the power book tree. But the thing to keep in mind is that neither this reference tab nor the opening book tab are going to be much good until you set up references. You need to set up a reference database and a reference opening book for ChessBase to be able to use these functions. Once again, to set them up, you just go to your database desktop. Right click, go to properties, and you'll see a checkbox for reference database if it's a database, or default book if it's an opening book. Notice also this is not etched in granite. You can change these. For example, if I was working strictly with the Cochrane Gambit and I wanted to use the reference tab, it'd be kind of dumb to set up Mega Database when I already pulled all the games out of Mega Database into a separate Cochrane Gambit database. So, if I want the Cochrane Gambit to be my reference database, if I'm working with nothing but the Cochrane, I can come down here to Properties, and I can make the Cochrane Gambit my reference database. And then it makes it the reference icon, which is funny. I don't want that. I want to get back up here to Openings. I can make that my reference database. The reference database should be bigger. Proceed? Well, yeah, because I'm just working with the Cochrane, okay? So we just want to go ahead and do that. We do want to proceed, yes, and there we are. And now when I'm in my Cochrane Gambit database, for example, I can be looking at a particular variation. Look in the openings book. There's the moves, but I can go to reference. Yes. And now I've got information on this position. Nothing hot here because the Cochrane isn't a real big opening. It's played a lot. But I do have last played. I do have the names of players who have played this particular move. Alexei Shirov has played c7 to c5 in this position as black in the Cochrane, which is kind of cool. In fact, while I'm thinking about it, we could actually go back go to our notation tab, click reference, and we can see that actually Kramnik, Shirov have played this. Pretty cool. We see top players have actually played the Cochrane Gambit, have played in this variation. Let's go here. Knight takes f7. Topalov, Short are the guys who've actually played the Cochrane. If we move ahead one move, then we get guys who played against it, Kramnik and Shirov. The Topalov game, I remember that. That was from Linares one year. I watched that game online live. That was really cool. And of course, Nigel Short has played it because Nigel is stone crazy. And I mean that in a good way. So, if you've ever read Nigel Short's commentary, go into some old ChessBase databases and look up Nigel Short as an annotator, and you will be wildly entertained. So, we can use any database as our reference database. If I'm working just with the Cochrane Gambit, just as an example, I would make my Cochrane Gambit database my reference database, just to speed up the process of looking for stuff in it. But normally, my Mega Database would be my reference database. That's it. Simple as that. But you need to do this to make some of the functions in ChessBase 11 work. So I just want to explain that to you so you won't get confused or upset when those pop-ups come up wanting to know if you want to load a book or telling you that you don't have a reference database selected. So there you go. Until next time around, I'm Steve Lopez for ChessBase Workshop. Till we meet again, please do have fun